Back in 2002, Capcom remade the original classic Resident Evil on PlayStation 1 for the Nintendo GameCube and had no plans to remake any other games in the franchise. But in 2019, Capcom blew the socks off everybody when they finally remade Resident Evil 2. This time with a new camera perspective, gameplay style, and re-envisioned maps and scenarios. So with one huge success out of the way, they moved on to remake Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. While still a good game, it doesn't come close to the remake of 2 or even the original Resident Evil 3, and fans were left disappointed. Now, in the holy year of gaming, 2023, we finally got a remake of Resident Evil 4 almost 20 years after the original, and it turned out to be incredible. A Game of the Year contender at the Game Awards, Capcom successfully recreated one of the best games of all time. Now, after the success of the Resident Evil 2, and kinda Resident Evil 3, and 4 remakes, Capcom has confirmed plans to continue the trend, although stopped short of announcing which Resident Evil game is next in line for them to remake first. All the obvious signs point to RE5 Remake coming next. It is heavily, teased in the ending to RE4, separate ways. If they decide to go this route, a huge question needs to be answered. Would they still make it a co-op game? Now that's a tough answer, as playing the original RE5 by yourself isn't that fun in my opinion, but if you play with a friend, it's one of the best co-op games of all time. I absolutely love playing the game in co-op. It feels just like a whole different game than playing alone. Now, in an ideal remake, they would still have co-op, but make the game just as fun if you were playing alone, which is a hard tightrope to balance on. But I have high hopes this newly resurgence Cap God can pull it off successfully. Now, going into the less obvious big-brained ideas would be a choice from, I'd say, 3 games. Remake Resident Evil 1 again, but with an updated camera and gameplay controls, a la Resident Evil 2 Remake. Remake Resident Evil 0 and try to redeem that game among fans after the abysmal inventory management between the two characters. Or remake Code Veronica and try to make Steve less annoying.
Sorry about that little misunderstanding. But I thought you were another one of those
Shut up!
Hell, I'll even throw in remaking Revelations 1, a criminally underrated game to me that was stuck on the 3DS too long before finally making its way to consoles. Let's say they remade Resident Evil 1 again. Many already consider the remake of 1 on GameCube a perfect, almost one-to-one remake. So let's say Capcom, went this route. It would make more sense to reimagine it in a way that the recent remakes have done. Seeing Wesker from the beginning, barring like a 0 remake, would prepare players who only played 4 to get prepped for his major antagonist role in RE5. Now, as much as I personally enjoy 0, despite the poor inventory management, it's almost unnecessary for the franchise as a whole. You learn a little bit about Dr. James Marcus, who was responsible for discovering the so-called progenitor virus in the 1960s, and Wesker's and William Birkin's involvement leading up to RE1 and 2. But protagonist Rebecca Chambers only showing up in RE1, and Billy Cohen, who never got to see another game after this, are essentially background characters to this franchise. Now, the same can't be said for fan-favorite Resident Evil Code Veronica. Originally released on the ill-fated Dreamcast in 2000, followed up by a PS2 release, was later remastered for the 360 and PS3. Now, a Code Veronica remake has been rumored and leaked for a while now. It was originally meant to be the 3rd entry in the series, before being turned into a spin-off title, so it's definitely important to the canon. If they were ever going to do a Code Veronica remake, it would have to be before they remake Resident Evil 5. If we see a Resident Evil 5 remake now, I cannot see them ever doing Code Veronica. To adapt the climax of the Wesker-Chris arc to then going back to almost the beginning would be kinda jarring, especially for new players who have never played these games. So if I had my way, I would remake RE1, then Code Veronica, and then RE5. But that would be an ideal world. But the biggest evidence in why RE5 Remake is probably next is because RE5 is still the best-selling RE game overall, and with how well the remakes are selling, I'm just saying I won't be surprised if it took precedence over the others. Either way, if you're a fan of Resident Evil, we're in the golden era at this moment in time.
Complete global saturation.